All right, and you may take it on from here. As people, if additional people come in, I'll admit them as they come in. And
Hi, my name is Steve Zehner, and for the purposes of today, I am just an eBird user. So I'm going to be showing you a little why I use it, and then talk a little bit about why it's good that it exists for the scientists of the world. But it's really going to focus on a scenario that steps us through planning for an outing to go birding with a friend coming in from out of town, actually going out for the day with that friend, recording our observations, and then coming back in and looking at some reports. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to spend like 5 slides in PowerPoint, so this isn't a death by PowerPoint discussion, but I would like to kick it off with a little bit of a level set of what eBird is. So bear with me. I've got 2 different devices. eBird has a mobile app, so I have a little cell phone over here. eBird has a web app. So web application, so I have the web application up here running on the laptop. Then I have the presentation running, so I'm going to be switching back and forth between multiple screens, so bear with me. And occasionally I'll stop and say, ask if there's any questions, and at that point in time, Dennis will allow people to unmute themselves and ask questions. So here we go with the first shift to see that I can share a screen, and I will. We can't talk and type at the same time. So can everybody see a screen that says, what is eBird? I see it on my little iPhone, so I'm assuming everybody can see it. eBird has kind of, in my view, two big uses. It wouldn't exist if there were not scientific benefit to this. The developers of eBird are writing it such that these observations that are entered are useful for the people that take these data sets and use it for studying bird populations, distributions, monitoring for many things that relate to things that biologists, professional biologists and researchers are interested in. And if you're interested in those, you can go out to ebird.org and review, kind of a list of what scientific articles. At the time I put this presentation together, there were over 200 of those scientific articles. But in the meantime, in order to get the data from anybody other than professional biologists, researchers, and students going out and gathering it, they had to make it useful for citizen scientists to use. It had to be not only easy to enter in, but also of use to them. So I'm going to talk about the personal benefits of reporting, keeping life lists of various levels at the world level, your state level, your county, etc. The minor benefit for how it's kind of helpful for assisting in identification. I'll talk a little bit about a monthly contest that eBird runs, such that one person a month wins a pair of binoculars. And then there's a notification system that you can set up for birds of interest in specific areas. So those are the things we're going to talk about. In some of the early announcements of this session today, we said we might talk about iNaturalist, but as I prepared, the eBird content grew more and more, so in 40 minutes, I doubt if we'll get to iNaturalist. But if people want to hang around a little bit, we can chat about that briefly after eBird. But that's about it. So with no further ado, what I'd like to do is put on my burden hat and let's go eBirding. So what I'm going to do now is lay out the scenario for you. So we're in Peoria Audubon, and we have people that are interested in coming out in April to come to our area, and they want to see the sights birding wise in Peoria. And you see these things on Facebook and other sites where you have people saying, where should I go in Peoria? And my first comment is, have you checked eBird? So I'm going to show you how to go into eBird and help plan for a trip that's coming up in April. So I'm going to jump over and start sharing my screen on my web browser, just any web browser. I happen to be using Windows, but it works on the Mac as well if you can get a web browser up. Oops, I pressed the wrong button already. Let's try that again. And I'm going to share my eBird screen. All right, now it should be popping up. And this is ebird.org. So this is the home screen. And I forgot to mention, I'm not going to cover how to download the app on your phone or how to bring up and sign on and get access to eBird. I'm just going to say, once you've done that initial thing, what does it look like? So this is what pops up as an eBird user. I have it set up so it automatically logs me in at ebird.org. It shows how many species in the world I've observed, how many of them have photos on them, and then some miscellaneous, how many checklists I've done. But for the sake of today, remember, we're planning for that trip coming up in April. So there's this function. You don't have to be a member of eBird. You don't have to sign up or any of that sort of stuff to do this exploring. So let's go exploring what the content of eBird is. There's a way of exploring species, interesting hotspots that are places where people have seen a lot of birds. But what we're interested in for today's purposes is saying, what is there in Peoria County? So all I'm going to do is type in Peoria over here, and you can see it types ahead and brings up a list. So we're going to pick Peoria, Illinois as an option, and it's by county. So that's one of the minor frustrations of this searching, is that it's by county. So you'll learn the counties of Illinois, if nothing else, by using eBird. So the screen that pops up is interesting. It shows by default all the years of all the data that's in eBird, how many species have been seen in Peoria County. So we can just scroll down through here, and I have it set up, it defaults to the most recent ones at the top. You look over to the right, you'll see the list of people that have been out there observing recently. So Susie Ingram and Pete Fenner and Jennifer, etc. You can see some people that have chosen to let their names be seen in eBird. You can, of course, be anonymous if you like. And so these are some interesting things on this home screen. But what we're going to look at in specific is this thing called bar charts. As you're planning a trip into the future, you click on this, and up pops a screen that lists all those 295 species for Peoria County. And you'll look down through here, and there's some interesting things. These little bar charts are by month. See the months: January, February, March, April. So we're planning for April. And you look down through here, and it gives you the relative abundance of those species for that month. So we just scroll down through here, and it's like, oh, no black-bellied whistling ducks. We shouldn't expect those in April. But we'll probably see some snow geese. We'll probably see some white-fronted geese, etc. as we go down through the list. So of course, we'll see Canada geese as well. So this bar chart function under the Explorer is very helpful for our planning. Now, let's say in particular that we are really wanting to see a snow goose. So there's these little icons over there. One of them, as you hover over it, you may not be able to see this if you're looking at it on a phone, but if you're looking at it on a computer screen, the word map pops up. So if we press that button, up pops a map with all sorts of little pinpoints of all those observations of all time of where snow geese have been seen in Peoria County and in the surrounding areas. So this is very, very helpful as you're planning for where species have been seen. And then we can change the level of zooming that we're looking at and look at a broader area, or we can zoom in closer and closer and closer to specific areas that we're interested in. And then you can click on these specific locations, and they will bring up all those observations at those locations. And then if you click on a date over here, it brings up everything that that person saw on that date at that location. So again, very helpful for our trip. So that's our first thing that we're going to look at. I want to take a little stop here when we cover every individual feature and ask if there's any questions anybody has about that general function that says explore using the data that's out in eBird to help us plan for a future trip. Anybody have any questions? Dennis, do you see anything in the chat, or should I go ahead?
No, just go ahead. Yeah, I think everybody
All right.
just mesmerized here.
And myself, I'm keeping a Peoria list. So I want to set up something so that I have a list of target species. So what I'm going to do, got to explore again, and then it says, okay, I'm going to look at target species. And again, I'm going to go to Peoria and say, what birds haven't I seen in Peoria? And it'll bring up a list of all the species I haven't seen in Peoria. And I can pick out, remember we're planning for April here, so I can say in April, what should I go after that I haven't seen in Peoria already? So it'll show me again, oh, I haven't seen a white-throated sparrow in Peoria. Where can I see a white-throated sparrow in April in Peoria? And again, as we're planning ahead, you can bring up a list of by county what you haven't seen, and then help you plan ahead for those target birds that you're looking for that you haven't seen before. So any questions about setting target birds? Okay. Next one says, okay, now let's put our time machine on. It's now April. We are getting real close to our friend coming into town. We've done all of our planning, but now we want eBird to be proactive and alert us about things that are happening. So there's a function go on, explore again, and we're going to set up some alerts so that eBird will send us an email. And I have it set up so that you can set up several different kinds of alerts. So let's start with alerting on what do I need for Peoria. So I'm going to, if I didn't have this on here, it wouldn't show up. But so let's unsubscribe to Peoria so I can add it back on there again. Okay. So I have it set up. You can go in here and add alerts by county and put it on by, here we go. So let's add in Peoria, Illinois. And I can subscribe for any rare birds that show up in Peoria, whether they're on my list, whether I've seen them or not. I'm going to get a list, and I can change it to be daily or more frequently. I can get hourly updates on things that eBird thinks are rare for my area. Will show up in an email. I've chosen to have it done daily. You can make it hourly if you want to. So any rare birds. There's also a way, again, typing in Peoria or whatever county you're interested in, and say, I want this to show me daily or hourly if anybody sees any birds that I haven't seen in Peoria, whether they're rare or not. So those are some things that I can set up within eBird, and you'll see that I've set it up ahead of time for rare birds in Illinois, anything I need in Tazewell. I mean, I could take this off because it would show up in Illinois, but you could have quite a long list here if you're interested in different counties, different states, or different geographies. So any questions about how you can set up alerts so that you can get emails that show up from eBird that say, hey, there's some birds you might be interested in. So any questions?
No questions came out, but if anyone is not aware of it, they can press and hold their space bar to temporarily unmute, and then as soon as they release their space bar, it goes back into mute. So yours, Steve. Steve, there was one question on the chat. It says, back to the target birds, is everything included that you've not already reported in the location?
And take a gander at that. So let's look at, let's just take a look at on September 8th. And these are some areas here. And again, these little icons over here are very helpful. If you don't know where Forest Park Nature Center is, man, those are some species I really need. but I'm from out of town. How do I get to Forest Park Nature Center? You just clicked on that map and it takes you into basically Google Maps, see, Google Maps, and then you could just plot directions. Just plot directions just like you would any other use of Google Maps. So any questions about how to use that function to get to where you need to go for finding these birds that you found and explore? Okay. So now we've done our planning. Our friend is here. We're sitting in our car. We're ready to go out. I'm not going to take my laptop with me. So thankfully, eBird has a mobile app. And what I'm going to do now is switch over from my laptop. Then somebody's in the waiting room there. So let me stop sharing that. And I will go to my trusty iPhone here. And I will get my eBird on here. You should now see my iPhone. Everybody see my iPhone? Nod your head if you see my iPhone. Okay, great. So I have a little folder here called Nature. Lots of little different things in them, one of which is the eBird app. So I'm pressing my eBird app. So this is what it looks like when you first start. But before we jump into that, I've got one other thing I want to share with you about, and I need to get back to my little notes here, about what makes a good observation before we start doing this. So one of the things that is helpful is having a way to secure your iPhone to your hand so that you can do this one-handed. Can anybody, while I'm sharing this, is my image kind of small? Do I need to take that off of sharing mode?
I see just fine.
Those birds, there's 1,000 of them. I don't know what they are. I'm just going to guess that they're all red-winged blackbirds. You can really mess up eBird data that way. So if you don't know what they are, don't put down what they are. Kind of the eBird thing when you're closing out the last of the observation is, are these all the birds that you knew, could identify? And you say yes, even though you couldn't identify all of them, you identified the ones that you could. So that's kind of by way of introduction. So let me go back to the sharing mode here. So this is the screen that first pops up. And it defaults to the current time, current date. So most of the times when you're out in the field, you just take that as is. You can, of course, go back and enter in things in the past that you saw before by changing the start time on that. I always, or usually, allow this thing, if you see this as record track, that turns on your GPS on your phone, and it keeps track of where you're at, and you don't have to guess how many miles you walked or that sort of thing. So I usually leave that one on. So we're just going to start a checklist when we get ready. But down at the bottom, I wanted to point out one item though before we do. See that Explore down at the bottom? That's a new feature they just added since August. It is a subset of all of the functions in the web application for the Explore capability. So you don't have to have your laptop with you. You don't have to open up a web browser to do those Explore capabilities on your phone. So you just type that there. So I'm not going to show it to you because it's really, really similar to what we did previously on a web browser. So we're just going to start our little checklist here. And you see what pops up is a list of things that are likely to be seen in your area. So this doesn't have all the species in the world in it. It just has the things that have been seen in a 20 by 20 kilometer area around where I'm at. So now we're going to make this a little bit interactive. We're out in the field. All of us are gathered in our separate cars. We're socially distanced from each other. I'm the tour guide, and I have volunteered to keep the eBird list for the group. So if you see something in your room, you look across and you see a picture of something, a bird, take yourself off mute and tell me what that bird is. Anybody?
Great gray owl.
Somebody said a great gray owl, so let's do one at a time. We see. I'm going to start typing. See, I start typing GREA, and see the list gets smaller and smaller. Oh, we just happened to pick one that nobody else has recorded in the 20 by 20. That's not surprising. So we're going to show you how that works. So that was later on, I was going to show you the California condor flying over. So we're going to jump ahead to the hardest thing here. It's not in this list that defaults. So you can see it says click here to search full taxonomy. That brings up the big list. So here is a great gray owl on there. So somebody saw a great gray owl flying over. So we're going to press a little plus sign. Did you see more than one?
No, I did not.
Okay, we just saw one of them. So we're going to cancel out of that. And see it down at the bottom here. Now we have one check down there. We've seen that one bird checklist on the bird. Anybody else see anything? Anybody else?
A surf scoter.
Surf scoter. Okay, so now we can start typing in surf scoter, but as you learn this, there are some shortcuts. So eBird will take, like surf scoter is a 2-word bird name. So if I type in SU and then SC, it's like the first 2 letters of the first name, the first 2 letters of the second word in the name. That's another shortened way of entering a 4-word code. So again, you can either start typing in the name, the full name, or use some of these. You'll get used to it that there's some shortened ways of doing it. So did you see like a dozen of them? Let's make sure. Let's say you saw a dozen of them. So you can press that plus sign 12 times if you want to, or you can just press the species name and then type in 12 and then say done. So we saw 12 surf scoters. Anybody else? Mary, did you see something?
I've got a blue jay here.
Okay, so let's do one that's a little bit that didn't show all of the. So you see the blue jay, and so anyway, we could go on, but does anybody have any questions about how to enter in things? One other thing I want to show you is I'm going to press this little check mark down at the bottom with the number 3 beside of it. And what that does is as you've developed a list of say 10 or 15 and you're keeping on seeing a onesie twosie show up of those same species, you can bring up, by checking this checkbox down at the bottom, off and on, it brings up just the ones that we've already entered. So then you can go back and say, oh, I saw another blue jay. Oh, and another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. And I'm just checking that, pressing the number, and it's adding one at a time. Or, oh, I saw another surf scoter, saw another surf scoter. Oh, I saw 20 more surf scoters. So I pressed the name. So I'm gonna, make it 39 or whatever it is. So again, you can bring up a shortened list as you go about in the field. So now we're going to address that. Let's bring up something. Let's do one more. Let's bring up house sparrow. House sparrow. Here's our list. See house sparrow? It doesn't have any circle beside it. That means it's common. You see blue jay with a half filled in circle? That means that it's not hasn't commonly been reported by eBird in this 20 by 20 kilometer area. It's infrequent. And then you see down below, it's in that category that unreported and non-species taxa, has a red circle and an R beside of it. That means we're going to have a little bit more work to do when we try to submit this observation. So we're going to, the red dot means that nobody else has reported it ever in eBird in this 20 by 20 kilometer area. And the R beside of it means that the people that set up eBird have set up some rules that say that bird is rare, and I want some documentation on that bird before I will accept that as being a valid remark or valid comment. So before we go into how to enter those in, Does anybody have any questions about how to enter in just the bird observations? Okay, so let's try to, now we're stopping the thing. We're getting ready to get back in our cars. Okay, we're ready to go to another location. So the first thing we have to do is put down, where is it that we saw this stuff? So what I did was I went up here and see it says choose a location. It brings up, again, according to the GPS locations that you're close to, a list of things that you can select from. Sometimes around here, like I set up a yard list. I happen to be in my yard. And sometimes it will bring up, there are hotspots in here, like Meadow Valley Park or Candlewood. If you're actually in one of those hotspot areas, it's always nice to put that there so that people can get the list of everything that was seen in Candlewood Park for trip planning. And Pete, I don't know, is Pete Fenner on? Pete, are you on there? Is that important for like newly formed nature centers to get some publicity? Do you have any comments you want to make on that or not? I think you're on mute. Can you unmute Pete?
Okay, I finally got myself unmuted. Yeah, I think it's a good idea from a, from outside visitors may be looking for a particular place to bird in Peoria, for instance, and at least, and this happens to me, I look at the top eBird sites of a particular town if I'm there, and that encourages me to go visit that place. So having more species on a hotspot is always a good thing, I think, for visitors. If that was your,
yeah, that was it.
that was your comment.
Yeah, I know that we had one location that Pete said, hey, if you're birding out there, make sure you code it for the hotspot. So if we're ready to submit this, so we found a location. This happens to be my yard. There was one observer, but hey, we've got a bunch of us here. There are like 20 of us here, and I am the trip organizer in a group. If you're going out with a professional guide, I view this as being one of those things that I put in a big plus for a guide that keeps the list for the group. And we'll go through how you can adjust it later for if you saw more than the less. But so let's say that normally I would be going out with Mary, my wife. So I'm going to say there are 2 observers, and I want to, that allows you to share the checklist. So if you know the eBirders user ID, and I think Mary is M-A-R-Y, whatever it is. I'm not going to type it in, but I don't remember off the top. Since I've already entered it before, I can enter it again. People share their checklist. I'll show you later what to do with those share checklists. So right now, I'm going to go back and share it with Mary. Say I'm done. And this is the question. The next one on here is this the complete checklist of the birds you were able to identify? I say yes. We were out 5 minutes, and if I was walking around, it would list miles. So at the top, if I was walking around, the GPS would be tracking it, and it would automatically put in traveling. In this case, I'm stationary. Sometimes you're just like, walking around or driving around and you see a bird fly over, you aren't really out birding. That would be an incidental sort of thing. So those are the three types that you can choose. So this was an incident. This was a stationary. Hey, so I'm all done. I'm trying to submit. Except for, oops, I didn't fill in the number of the observers. So it now comes up with, hey, there's some things that were flagged as rare. So you're going to have to put some comments on those. No matter how many times you press continue, it won't let you submit these things. And now is the time to do 2 things. You can either say, eBird hates me. I'm never going to use eBird again. They don't trust me. Or you can say, this is a learning experience. Ebird is saying these are rare for this area at this point in time. This is my opportunity to show Ebird that I know what I'm talking about. I know what these are. So there's a comment section down here that you don't just say, I saw a surf scoter. You would say, I saw a duck that was, 50 yards away. This is the color of it. And as much information as you can put in there about it. There are hints and tips in the Ebird education as to how to write a good description. One of the things that I like to do is take pictures. So one of the common things that I always put in, or most often put in, is something to the effect of pictures to be posted. Hang in there. I'm going to post some pictures later on. And any comment you put in there is valid enough to get you by this check here. And I will. And if I were to hit submit, it would take this. Now, what's happened in those two cases, let's say that I had put in a comment that just says, this is what I saw. I could spell it. The Ebird app would take that as a valid comment. It would let me submit this observation. What will happen within a few days, however, is that there's some automatic intelligence that goes through, and if there's nothing rare in there, it automatically gets accepted and gets posted out with the rest of the Ebird data. If it's rare, somebody personally called an Ebird regional reviewer, an expert in that area, or at least more expert than I am, reviews those and looks at the comments, any pictures, and if it's not sufficient to them that says that you have convinced them that's what you really saw and it's rare enough, they'll send you an email, and they're very nice people. It says, hey, I noticed this here, and could you add some more comments about that? Because I can't accept that observation for that species without a little bit more detail. Sometimes what I have done is I've accidentally posted the wrong picture for a species. It's, rushing through. And then I'll send them an email back and say, okay, I fixed it. Here's the right picture I attached to it, and then I'm going on. So I'm not going to submit this because we didn't see a scover or a gray owl, but that would what would happen if I did hit the submit button there. So anybody have any questions?
Question, Jim.
Was that a question?
Yeah, this is Jim.
Yeah.
Mary had a note there, show how to get rid of a species. So if for example, if it was, I didn't mean 39, I meant 3 surf scoters, or if I wanted to get rid of the great gray owl.
Yeah, okay, I will go back to the share screen over here again. Okay, back into Ebird here. So if I want to get rid of the great gray owl, I'm swiping from left to right, and you see it brings up this clear data. I can just delete the whole thing, and the great gray owl is gone. Or on surf scoter, I can just click on the name and then change the quantity back down to 1. Done. Then changes it back to 1. Or I can just swipe from left to right, excuse me, from right to left, and clear it out entirely, and that would remove that. So that answer your question, Jim?
Yes, thank you.
Great.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
I failed to report the Dowager SP that you asked
Oh,
me
yeah.
to notice.
Yes, so let's go back and add one here. So we've got one we need to add here. So I'm going back to my checklist that I didn't submit here. And let's say that we saw a Dowager. And this gets back into report what you know. So if you look at Dowagers here, if we knew it was a short-billed Dowager, we could put it there. We could put plus one of those. But a lot of times, I don't know which Dowager it is. There will be some species like this that are hard to identify in the field. But if you don't know what it is, you can say, I saw 2 of them. I don't know which one of these is. That's helpful. Those are species that have a slash in the middle. So in the eBird documentation, those are called slash birds, if you will. The other thing that's common is I saw a sparrow, or excuse me, or I saw a duck. Whoops, I saw a duck. I don't know what kind of duck it was, but it was a duck species. So you would enter in duck SP. So I saw 10 ducks or saw 5 ducks. So that's a way for people that are just getting started into birding to use eBird, even though they aren't experts at anything. You can just say, I saw some sparrows. Great, put them in. So you've recorded what you know. So that gets back to, again, report what you can identify, even if it's just down to the level that says, I saw a duck of some sort. Okay, great. Thanks for, I had that in my notes, but I skipped over it. Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment, Steve, if you'll
Yeah.
give me the floor for a minute.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is citizen science, and it's really contributing to scientific data and the scientific data that's out there. So it gets peer reviewed just like any science would, any, you know, real true science. And that's what those comments do that Steve showed, that, you know, really sort of justify what it is that you saw. And it's oftentimes, you know, there's some reluctance in reporting a rare bird. If you saw a rare bird, you don't want to have to go through the review process and have a reviewer, you know, sort of check up on you. But that's what peer review is, and that's what real science is. So just keep that in mind, and try not to be grumpy about it, because it's easy to sometimes get grumpy and either not report the rare bird that you saw, or just have to go through the whole process of the reviewer double checking what you saw. So it's all good, and it's all good for science.
Now we're back from our trip. We had a wonderful trip. We're back. I'm trying to find the right screen to share with you here. I think that's it. We're back to ebird.org, our friendly home screen. And she shares checklists with me. So if somebody shares a checklist with you, let's say the tour guide, it shows up in this, we go into my eBird shared checklist, and you get a list of everything that people have shared with you. And anything that is new says, hey, do you want to accept this or decline it? And usually the best idea is accept it. And what happens is that it brings up a list. But and at least in my family, Mary is a better birder than I am, especially birding by ear. And her list, she puts in a lot of stuff that I didn't see or hear. And sometimes I'm focusing on taking thing, and it's got to go down through here. And usually it's best right after you get back that says, you know, I really didn't see that goldfinch. So this is how you can have one person recording for the group. But in order, again, for things like your life lists and that sort of stuff to be accurate, don't just take the lists that come in, but go in and remove things that you didn't see, like this. I'll say I didn't see actually more likely I saw the Tennessee. I didn't see the magnolia for sure, let's say. I take that one off, and it shows down here that this is a species on this observation list that Mary saw, but I didn't see. Or I can go through and bring up this list again and says, you know, I saw a mute swan that Mary didn't see, and I can add it in. Of course, I didn't see that, so I'm not going to do it. But that's a way where you can tweak it. A shared list that somebody has shared with you, you can start with that. And that gives you so that everybody doesn't have to make the same list for a group outing or going out with somebody else. So anybody have any questions about how to tweak that a little bit? And this is also the place, remember I said that if we have a picture of something, that we can add the picture later. So I've gotten my big honking camera comes back. I've downloaded all the pictures to my laptop. I've gone in and edited them to figure out which one I want to add in. And so this is add media. And pictures are one thing that you can add. You can also add sound files if you're recording sound. Oh, here it is over on the right. You can add JPEGs up to 10 megabytes a piece, or audio sound files. And so for me, give you an example here that, hey, there's a picture of a Canada goose. Sorry about that, I didn't have a Canada goose on this list, but let's, actually that's a blue-winged teal. So what would happen here is that if I submitted this, the eBird reviewer probably wouldn't even see that. It would be a mistake, but if people are out viewing these things, they can flag them and saying that's really not a Canada goose, and I'd get another email. So again, even on your pictures, take it out and make sure that you put in the right media that matches your observations. If this was a rare sighting, the reviewer would be using that along with that observational notes that we took before to either accept that observation or send you an email saying, hey, could you provide some more detail on that? And this would also be the place where you can, after you've gone back and reviewed your notes, add a little bit more detail or clean up any typos or whatever you've made when you were typing in the field. So any questions about how you add either sound files or pictures to your observations to help? Again, this is more important on the rarities than the other things, but you can put pictures of anything in there that you want. Any questions? I'm not going to put that in there. I'm going to delete that so that it doesn't cause an issue. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, Dane Ward had a question.
Okay. What was the question?
Is it important to specify gender or juveniles?
If you can, it's a place there are fields in eBird that are descriptive, and versus taking a lot of time, I point you to the eBird education. I'll have the sources at the end to go down through there to flag things like, is this nesting? There's all sorts of things that eBird says, these are very interesting to us. And you look on those rather than doing it in the notations freehand. It's more helpful if they have something that's specific to what they're looking on to pick those. And I'm not sure if juvenile and that is in the list or not. But if it's not, you can always put things into detail. But there are certain things that they are looking for in specific. So what I'm trying to talk and type at the same time, and that's never been very helpful to me. So I'm going to go back and edit the species here and add details, and I will show you where it is. So here's where they do have certain fields for age and sex. This is where you would put a check mark here. So this is the way to do it for the sex and age, if you know, is to do it that way. Does that make sense? And put quantities of these 6, 3 of them were male juveniles and 3 of them were male adults. So that would be the place to do that. They also have breeding codes where you can put in all of these sorts of characteristics. So again, this is an introduction, but there are places to add those things. Okay. So that's it. Now we're into lists, and we're running out of time. So I'm back to my eBird again. And here's my world list, but that's usually not all that interesting. So let's say that I want to look at my Illinois list, everything that I put in Illinois. And so it brings up, my Illinois list here. And then I can say, I really like to have this list in a checklist. You can download a file, a CSV file, which is essentially something that you can load into a spreadsheet. So you can make this location, down to the county level if you want to, change the region. Just like just like the Explorer. So if I want to see my Peoria list, I can my Peoria list, 142 species, whatever. So it just brings up a list. So this is what converted me over to use eBird, was that it was a way to keep my lists. And I didn't have to keep them. If I recorded them in the field, it's on a list and I don't have to think about it. So any questions about that personal use of the recording function? Okay. Stop sharing that. And I'm going to share presentation. So I'm going to bring up some common concerns that I've heard from people. One was that I don't know how to identify anything. I'm not good at it. And all I can say is that you don't have to be good at it to use eBird. If you don't know it, don't put it in there. If you can narrow it down to short-billed, long-billed dowitchers, I showed you how to do that. If you can narrow it down to it's a goose of some sort or a sparrow, you can enter that. Enter what you know. And if you can't get it down to like sparrows or goose, don't put it in at all. But don't worry about it. You're out there to have fun birding. So put down what you know and don't worry about what you don't know. So that's my comment about. And it does have an interface into this app called Merlin, which is a way that helps with identification. So there is a link to that app that the eBird people at Cornell have written this app to help you identify if you have a picture. Not really helpful all that in the field with a cell phone. It's kind of hard to get a good picture of a bird, but it is there. And for anything that the eBird people didn't accept, they don't take it off of eBird. It just doesn't show up in the public information. So as far as I know, it still shows up on my list, even though eBird didn't accept that counting thing. So usually I put it on myself that if I can't convince an eBird reviewer that that's what I saw, I don't keep it on my list, but I think some people still keep it on a list, even though it's not in the public data or that others will see. Another one is that sensitive owls, whooping cranes or endangered species that I don't want some hunter or whatever, for example, to go into eBird and find out where they're all at and go out there and kill them or trap them or whatever. So eBird has their own list of sensitive species and they keep control over what shows up in the public eye for those species. And if you want to control your own list, you can record it down to the county level and then it doesn't show up in the public list. So that's for each individual species, you can hide it or not if you want it to hide a individual observation if you don't want people to come around to your backyard or whatever to find the hummingbird that you saw. You don't have to let the public know that you saw it, but it still is out there for the scientific value of it. Any questions about kind of that question? I'm not going to go into how to do it. I just say that capability is there. And lastly, so we're getting down to the last sorts of things. I'm going to go back and show the part where eBird makes it fun. And I'm going to go into that home screen there. So if you go into the recent news, that what pops up at the beginning, every month there is something called the eBirder of the Month Challenge. So Zeiss Optics makes a wide variety of binoculars ranging from a few $100s to $2,300, $2,500 range. They've partnered with eBird so that once a month they give away for people competing in this challenge. Anybody that meets this challenge, they put all the people that meet the criteria into some sort of a big bucket and they draw out one winner per month. And that binocular is a 8x42 Conquest Zeiss binocular. Retail, list price is about $1,000. You can probably, buy it on sale for somewhere in the $800 range. So it's a nice, really nice pair of binoculars. And what they're trying to do is get people to use some things in eBird that they might not use. And so it's a motivational way. So this month, can everybody see this month's challenge? Is to submit 30 complete checklists. It says, I have entered in everything I could identify, and to do 30 of those during September. Now, 30 isn't hard to do, but it does take some motivation to get out there and do it. So it's a motivation to, you know, if you like contests, and it's different every month. So sometimes it's submit 10 observations that have pictures attached to them, or submit 20 observations all from the same locations this month, or, you know, various things. They've kind of changed it up, or put in breeding codes on in some comment. I think last month was enter in 20 checklists that had some sort of a comment. So it's a way to get people to try out different things in eBird. And again, here it describes what the binoculars are, etc. So any questions about that little fun thing? There's some other contests that they have in there that I personally don't do, but there's like win free spot and an identification course. Again, you can just read their news, and they have at least one every month. Sometimes they have more than one. I've never won, by the way, but it's fun to think that you could. And lastly, I have one little thing, a couple of clicks on a presentation thing to show up here. So closing out, what Mary and I use eBird for is reporting our observations in the field with an app. And then I enter the pictures on the PC when I get back home. And then for the reporting, for looking for things for trip planning, if you're heading out to Arizona or something, it is really helpful if you're going somewhere to see what's common in what locations. It really is very helpful. And then to keep track of our life and location lists in a way that is automatic, and I don't have to worry about it. And I can download it if I want to keep it in a spreadsheet format. So that's what we use it for. Here's a list of all of the links that I found helpful. This eBird Essentials course, it's essentially somebody that has videotaped the things that they think are important for an eBird user. That would be the place I would start, is going through that video. And then there's been others recording education sessions as well. So with that, my 40 minutes has expired about 5 minutes ago. So I'm going to stop and say, does anybody else have any questions?
There's a question from Juanita Belcher. Can we backdate a list? I was out Sunday, but haven't recorded it.
Absolutely. Remember when I first started up, it brings up the current time and date. You just change it to what you want it to be. There's even a way that if you've kept your historical lists in things like AVSys or some older bird recording list, to be able to export that into a spreadsheet format. It tells you what format to put it in so that you can import historical observations into eBird. And there's a whole write-up on how to do that too. I mean, you can go back. I've recorded stuff back, that we've kept on in, again, a program called AVSys. I've exported it to a spreadsheet in the right format and then imported those into eBird in a batch. And it doesn't have all the information, but at least it keeps our life list. So that's kind of my life list back from, as long as I recorded what county it was recorded in, then it imported it in. So does that answer your question? You can do it individually, or if you've got a spreadsheet with a bunch of them in it, you can do it that way too. Do you want me to show you how to do that, or just, I mean, not the import, that's a longer process, but on the app, I can show that for you.
There's another question. Isn't there a global count coming up in the fall? And I know the main count is in February, referring to the, I think, backyard bird count.
I don't know. The one thing that the Peoria Audubon gets into and publicizes is the Christmas bird count. So you'll see some postings from us about. Dennis, do you want to make any comment about that, or? You're on mute, Dennis.
There. Peoria Audubon participates in 3 local Christmas bird counts. There's a Peoria Christmas bird count, one for Chillicothe, and one for Chautauqua. And I have some information for each of these 3 counts on our website under the calendar events. But as it would imagine, these are all around Christmas time. 2 of the counts are just a little bit before Christmas, and usually one maybe around January 1 or January the 2nd. But we will put out more information on those as time proceeds. We welcome new people that have never been on a bird count before, as well as those who have, have a bit of expertise. And so if you're new and you're not really sure, well, no problem at all, because we will match you up with a person that is a little more knowledgeable. And it's very important to enjoy the day and have fun while you're out there in the field counting, and possibly learn something and make your own contribution to citizen science. I will mention one more thing about the Christmas bird counts. I think this will be about the 111th annual Christmas bird count. It may be off by a year or 2, but this is one of the longest running incidents of citizen science, at least in the United States. I don't know where it counts worldwide, but it's a very long running incidence of citizen science that you can participate in.
Yeah, and with the COVID stuff, we redid spring bird census, so that again, people were not requested to go out with people that they didn't already have contact with. So we're again mindful of those things, but so there may be some recommendations or hints and tips as to how to do that, but as far as I know, Christmas bird count is on, but it's mainly up to you to figure out, do you go alone with your spouse, or do you go with people in separate cars and social distance and those sorts of things. There'll be probably some sort of recommendations coming out, but again, it's personally up to you how to protect yourselves and others in that. And so we're not going to get into that. So
yes, there will be additional information along that line. There's also a spring bird count that's timed to be the very first week of May, at the peak of the spring migration. And this past year, there was a spring bird count, but the participants in it basically went out by themselves or with their significant others in order to just maintain distance from everyone and still get out there and bird. So modifications to the usual have to be made at this point.
And like I think someone brought up, sometimes in this eBird we'll do something too, like the worldwide eBirder thing. One of the challenges will be everybody in the world is going to do it this day. So there was one of those several months ago. I can't remember when that was, but that would be in this news category if eBird is doing something. So you would kind of scroll down here, October Big Day 2020. So that again, that may be what you're referring to as far as eBird is related to.
Yeah, there's a comment about the Big Sit, which is an October event, and there is kind of a global big day in October, I think, but that is typically been organized by the Peoria Park District, and there's been there's the past several years that's happened generally up at Tawny Oaks, but I don't think that's happening this year because of the pandemic, but that is an event that often happens in October.
Yeah, so that the Illinois Ornithological Society organizes that, and as far as I know, we don't have a team signed up for that this year. And then here's the eBird one in October, the October Big Day for eBird recording. So that's in the news of eBird.
Steve, I got a question about target lists.
Yeah.
If you bring up a target list for a given area, is that going to include everything that you have not previously reported from that area, or
yeah.
How does that? Okay.
Yeah, that's what that does. It goes out there and sees what has been reported for that area, and you can set the time of year that you're interested in. So you can go for Peoria, for example. You can set what month, what list you're interested in. Your year list, your month list, your day list, your life list for that county, that state, whatever. Does that make sense, Jim?
Yes, thank you.
Well, I hope this was helpful. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much.
Very well done. Thank you.
Okay, I will make a PDF of this. Again, I have screenshots, not exactly what I showed. It was at the time that I did this. And I'll give that to Dennis, and it'll be there for your reference somewhere. There being, I don't know where Dennis will post it, but somewhere.
I don't yet either. This will probably be under what we call speaker notes, which is where I posted additional information from previous speakers. But this will probably be not for at least a few more days, maybe a couple weeks, but we'll get it there.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Was this format okay for, we're planning for future events without, out of town speakers and specialists and stuff. So just a quick nod of head or send a note to Peoria Audubon if you didn't like it or did like it. So anybody not like or think that this didn't work, wasn't valuable, technology standpoint?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
I'm glad everybody could attend. Thank you all for participating. We appreciate it.
Good night.
Cheers.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and sign us off then.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.